Infinities of love. We're thinking about love this morning. We just sang about what wondrous love is this, about God's love for us in Jesus Christ and his self-giving love. We're learning about the love that Jacob had for Rachel, and he ended up marrying Leah as well. So there was some kind of, what can we say about it? The trickster got tricked himself. And I gave the title of my sermon, Infinities of Love, because there's also familial love that is faithful and long-lasting. Infinities of love is how Jane Austen, my favorite writer, wrote in a letter to her sister Cassandra, when finally her book Pride and Prejudice had arrived, and she called it My Own Darling Child. The two sisters understood each other because Cassandra had been engaged and her husband went off to the West Indies and he died of a fever there. That didn't work out. And poor Jane, she wanted to be a writer, and her parents really encouraged her in that. And she was getting older, and her dad, died. And a friend of theirs proposed, and she said yes, but immediately regretted it and ended up breaking the engagement the next morning. So, there was drama, and the two sisters understood each other, and they were going through all the difficulties together. So Jane and Cassandra had a lot of love as sisters, encouraging each other in tough times. So infinities of love, I just love that phrase because it's more than one infinity. I don't know if there is going to be more than one infinity. Mathematically, theologically, if there's any kind of love, God is in charge of it. And if there's infinity, God is in charge of that too. And there are many, maybe galaxies. I don't know. It's just a wonderful poetic way of saying deep love forever. Well, this story of Jacob at the well kind of brings us to a way of thinking about romantic love. And as we've been working our way through some of the highlights of Genesis, this story at the well might remind us of a previous love story at the well, when Abraham sent his servant to go find a wife for his dear son Isaac. And he sent the servant to do the marriage arrangement with a bunch of jewelry and fancy clothes. This time it's Jacob. He's got his brother's stolen clothing that he's wearing, and he's got his staff in his hand, but he's got a mind. And he also, you can't see it, but he has the blessing of God, which is really going to help him because he's going to need a lot of help. He kind of stole the blessing from his brother, but his dad ended up giving it to him again after his father, who was blind, didn't really realize it at first. He ended up giving him the blessing again, and he said, "You shall be blessed." So, what we notice about Jacob here is that right away, even before he meets Rachel, he is interested in the right way to be a manager of flocks of sheep. All right? He sees the 3 different flocks gathered by the well, and he talks to those 3 shepherds, and he's like, "Hey, what's the deal? You got flocks here, you got a well, why are they not drinking the water? It's the high noon, heat of the day." And they're like, "Well, actually, there's one more we're waiting for." And oh, here she is. It's Rachel. So he's found out that these are, he's in the right place. He wanted to meet up with anybody who knew about Laban and actually meet Laban's family. And then he realized, oh, wow, this is a daughter of Laban. So instead of getting the other shepherds to help him move the heavy stone and roll the heavy stone away, he does it himself. Yeah, right on. Kind of like the way that Rachel's aunt, Rebecca, was watering the animals. There's a lot of heroics going on here. We're impressing each other. It's like the first date. You got to really make the effort, and he did. So he moved the stone away, and hey, as we're heading to Easter, did anyone think about rolling the stone away that was heavy? I was like, well, that's interesting. The well of life-giving water, and who's going to remove the encumbrance for us? So he's so happy to see her. He kisses her and he cries. And in the HarperCollins Study Bible, it said, this was a traditional greeting for relatives who haven't seen each other in a long time. Oh, thank goodness you made it on the long journey. You're safe and sound. And they are cousins, even though they've never met, never seen each other before. Turns out, I think he fell in love with her like love at first sight. So he tells a story, and she runs to tell her dad, Laban. Also like her aunt, who ran to tell their dad and Laban, who was there for that scene at the well. It's totally fascinating. All right, maybe you're not into the close reading of the text. We'll move on. So he's telling him all this story, and so as soon as Laban sees him, he's like, "You surely are bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." I think he totally had the family resemblance. He's like, I could see from a mile away, you are definitely my nephew, right? And the cool thing about that is, somebody else said that in Genesis 2. It was Adam when he saw Eve. What? Yeah, it's so cool. That shows this deep love and affinity for one another. Okay, so he's admitting we're close relatives. You even look like me. And he makes him work for a month. He makes him work for a month before he starts talking about wages. So we're learning a little more about Laban. Okay, so meanwhile, Jacob's been managing the sheep. He's been implementing some improvements, talking about the pasture, when they should be watered, and doing all of the things. And Laban says, all right, well, I should probably give you some wages since you don't have a home and you've been here a month. So let's make an arrangement. And Jacob's like, well, you know what? Really, the only thing I really want is to marry your daughter, Rachel. He's like, oh. Now, he doesn't say yes. He says, she shouldn't marry anyone but you. Okay. And he also mentions that, we do have this older daughter, Leah. Hope you like her. Leah's great. She's the firstborn. And all this talk about the firstborn should be reminding us about the fact that Jacob's not the firstborn. And there are laws and expectations about the order of properly doing things and what should happen when, to whom, and how. So they agree on 7 years. 7 years of work, and then we'll have the wedding feast. It'll be amazing. So happy. And they do. They have a wedding feast. It's beautiful. Everybody's there. The family's there. The whole community. And it seemed, those 7 years of work seemed as a few days because of his love for Rachel. That is so lovely. All right. So he's like, they're having the wedding feast, and it includes the details as in the marriage contracts in that part of the world at that time. Who's going to be the maidservant, which basically nanny, or if needed, surrogate, will be attached to legally provide children with the bride. So we find out that that's included right here in the biblical text. Laban gave the slave girl Zilpah to his daughter Leah. And you're like, wait a minute. In the Bible, it's so tricky. He worked all that time for Rachel, and they have the big wedding feast, and it's nighttime, and it's dark. And even when we have like a wedding veil, you might see the eyes of the person, and Leah's eyes were beautiful, and all of Rachel was beautiful. So Laban tricked Jacob. Oh man. He's finally got his own tent. He's starting his household. They're married. He wakes up in the morning. It's Leah. What? He married the wrong sister. And he confronts Laban about it. And he's like, well, I told you, it's just really not customary to marry off the younger daughter. You can have Rachel. Why don't you finish your honeymoon with this daughter for the week, and then I'll give you Rachel, but you got to work 7 more years. Oh man, that trickster got tricked. Okay, so you have to think about it from a different point of view. How is it that God is going to work through this? We've got Jacob having tricked his father and his brother. He goes back to the source of the family line, and the qualities that we've seen a little bit in his mom, Rebecca, with all that drama. Every time something happens, she's like, why is this happening to me? And Laban's a little bit like that. Later on in the text, he said, everything you see here is mine. The daughters are mine. The grandchildren are mine. The sheep, the goats, everything's mine. Even though, eventually he paid him in some of the flocks and sheep. Well, what can we learn from this about love? Sometimes love comes at first sight. Sometimes it's that binding love that led him to fall in love with Rachel, and the time passed by, and it really did seem like a few days because he loved her so much. Now, eventually, they were able to have children through Leah and Leah's servant girl, and finally, Rachel was able to have a child, the dear son, Joseph. So at that point, it's been like 20 years. And finally, Jacob says, you know what? I feel like I've completed my time with you. I really want to head back to my own hometown, if that's okay. And could you pay me before I go, since, it has been 20 years. So they make an arrangement about all of the animals that have spots will be his. So God ended up blessing him through that. I think he was paying attention because he had a dream, and he noticed about the animals that had markings on them produced other animals that also had markings on them. And God told him, pay attention to that. So in this experience of being tricked by Laban, God was also providing blessings. And the man who thought he was working for one wife ended up having 2 wives. And those wives ended up also producing children through their servant girls. Seriously, I'm not really a big feminist, but I still don't like that whole situation. But we're going with it because, it's in the Bible. And adoption is awesome. And surrogacy is amazing. And if anybody can have a child in any particular way, why should we begrudge them that? I just feel bad for people who maybe feel like they don't have a choice in the matter. Okay, enough sidebar. Eventually, everything begins to work out. Yeah, eventually, it takes 20 years, but God's blessing provides all 12 children of Jacob that end up becoming the 12 tribes of Israel. Yeah. Eventually, they make their way all the way back to the land of Israel. And they cross over the rivers. And the thing is, Jacob has to meet his brother Esau. And the last thing he had said to him was about stealing his birthright. So what's going to happen? Finally, it's like the culmination of all of this heart-rending trials and tribulations. Is he going to do the right thing? Is he going to do the wrong thing? Can you trust Jacob? Can you trust Esau? Because Esau was like, I'm going to kill him. Right? So serious. So Jacob sends on a gift, and he divides out all these many, like hundreds of animals to give as a present to his brother Esau. And he sends them forward with those shepherds and goat herds. There were lambs, there were sheep, there were goats, there were cows, there were bulls, there were camels. I mean, you name it. Everything that's his, he took a big hunk of it and he sent them as a present. And he said, I need you to tell Esau, these are all a gift for you, my Lord, and your servant Jacob is coming to meet you. So he's planning this reunion. He's like, if I can just give as many presents as I possibly can afford, I'm going to do it. And so he sends them all forward, and finally, there's a moment of truth. Remember how he had that dream of the ladder or the ramp, the stairway to heaven? Well, God gave him another night of very spiritual importance. He wrestled. Was it a man? Was it an angel? He wrestled all night long. He didn't get any sleep the night before his final meeting, his reunion with his twin brother Esau. The wrestling went on and on. Was he wrestling with his conscience? No, I think he really was wrestling because his hip was injured, and forever after that he walked with a limp. He said, oh, can you let me go? The dawn light is coming. And he said, don't let me go until you bless me. And so the angel said that he would be blessing, and he gave him a new name, Israel. So Jacob is the same as Israel. It's used interchangeably. And the name Israel means one who has striven or struggled or wrestled with God. Wow. Finally, they make it. And thankfully, when Esau sees Jacob, he falls on his neck and he kisses him, and they weep, and they're friends again. It's like a miracle, honestly. The love that Esau had for his one and only brother 20 years later somehow welled up in the gift and seeing his face again. He said, seeing your face again is like seeing the face of God. I think he was just so relieved that he wasn't furious with him. So finally, they have made up and they are reunited. And all of the time away, when Jacob started out with nothing, God had blessed him to receive all of those flocks and herds. And meanwhile, even though Esau didn't have the blessing, he was in charge of all of their father's stuff. So actually, he has been very successful as well. And he has a ton of flocks and herds that he got from their father Isaac. So actually, it all turned out as well as it possibly could, considering how unfair it was. Oh man. They meet up, and Esau's like, why don't you come with me? And Jacob's like, listen, there are so many animals. We don't want to push them too hard. And he says, you go ahead and I'll follow slowly. But he ends up kind of just going back on his own way. And so that last day of that reunion was like the first and last time they saw each other again as this part of the story unfolds. So you think, wow, brotherly love won out in the end. Thank goodness. And now we're able to see that God is going to continue this line of blessing through these people who've had some ups and downs in their relationships. And there's going to be some difficulties in their relationships as well. Rachel ended up having a second son named Benjamin, but she died in childbirth. So that's sad. But as we think about it, we're considering the meaning of all of these interactions that are so much like a soap opera. We can relate to them in our own lives. And the passage that David read for us in the New Testament is about trying to have the mind of Christ, being in the spirit of the Lord instead of the flesh. Now, the Apostle Paul, when he talks about of the flesh, he's talking about that sinful human nature, our self-centeredness, our grasping after things for ourselves, our worldliness. And it says, when we're caught in that way of thinking, we are just like Laban. We are people who are trying to get the best deal for ourselves. We're only considering what is ours, or what ought to be ours, or what we wish were ours. We're only considering how we can get our older daughter married off along with the younger daughter. That kind of stuff. But the mind that is set on the flesh is not pleasing to God. And we know that within our own experience. When we're focusing on the wrong things in our relationships, in our career that's meant to be our vocation, in our relationships with our neighbors, if we're focusing on the wrong things, that begins to produce unhappiness. Actually, it creates that kind of negative feedback loop that affects all the parts of our life. And that's not what's pleasing to God, and that's not what he has for us. He intends for us to be blessed as well. And how can that happen? It says, if indeed the Spirit of Christ is within you. It's through God's gift of grace, through his gift of faith. If we are finding ourselves thinking on these worldly things, focusing on ourselves and what we consider our rights and what ought to be, maybe what we need to do is turn back to the Lord and think upon the kindness and love of our Lord Jesus, the wondrous love he has for us that caused him to even go to the cross, to be obedient to God, and to suffer on behalf of us for our sake, so that we would be reconciled with God. It's our own challenge in this Lenten season as we keep walking toward Holy Week. Can we turn our thoughts to the Lord Jesus? Can we dwell in our minds on eternal things, the love and kindness of God, the forgiveness and restitution that he provides, the fresh start and new beginning, so that we are not like Jacob coming empty-handed or trying to appease God as though God is angry. To trust in God that his love has already been shown to us in Jesus Christ. To be people who seek to follow in his way of humility and generosity and kindness. In that sense, God gives us an infinity of love. Amen.